Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the webinar today. We're going to be talking about securing and empowering your organization with Active Directory. I have with me today Jason Milgram. He's our Director of Software Development here at Champion Solutions Group, and he's also a Microsoft Azure MVP. Now, Jason, what is an MVP? I don't understand that.
Sure. Well, hello, everyone. And yes, a Microsoft Azure MVP there. Worldwide, there are several thousand MVPs, and Microsoft breaks those MVPs into different product and service categories. And I've been a Microsoft Azure MVP for 6 years now, and as when I last checked, I was one of 16 in the United States. So it just means I've worked with Azure a lot. We've helped a lot of customers move to the cloud and help implement kind of new strategies around the cloud and new processes and systems to help improve bottom line.
So Azure's been around for 6 years now?
It's been around before that.
Oh, really? I really didn't know that. I figured 4 or 5 years max. So how long do you think it's been around?
Well, of course, before the general availability, they had various previews, and they had previews under NDA. But it's a very impressive set of cloud services.
Okay, great. Well, I'm just going to go through a little bit of information about Champion here. By the way, my name's Kevin Vogel. I'm the Vice President of Virtualization and Cloud Computing here at Champion. As you can see, we're pretty proud of our cloud practice. We're, like Jason was saying, we've been doing this. We've been doing Office 365 for over 6 years. Obviously, Azure for a little bit less than that. I'd say 4 to 5 years. But, we are the #1 cloud SMB partner in the United States for Microsoft, and we have been for the last 3 years. We've moved almost 2 million people into the Microsoft cloud, and that's a pretty impressive number. I think last time we checked, we were #3 in the United States behind some really big players out there. And as you can see, MessageOps is really our cloud division for Champion. Champion's been established since 1979, and we have been a traditional service provider and implementation partner for companies like IBM and HP and Cisco and NetApp and a lot of large companies like Microsoft and VMware and so on. So, we've been doing this for quite a long time, but today we're going to really concentrate on the cloud, and really we're going to concentrate on Azure and Active Directory. So with that, like I was saying, these are just some of the awards that we've won. You see an IBM Beacon Award there and a bunch of different awards from different companies. It just means that we think we're pretty good, and so do our partners like Microsoft and VMware and IBM and so on. So with that, I'm just going to give you a couple of poll questions here, and there's only 2 of them. So if you get a chance, please answer these. They'll really help us make sure that we are asking you guys the right questions or answering the right questions. So you're going to have a poll question there that if you just click on yes or no, if you're already using Office 365, and we'll just do this for a minute. So far, 100% of you are saying you're already using Office 365, and that's to be honest with you, that's not surprising. This is a very popular item. It's something we're moving people to almost every day. Okay, I'm going to close that one and just ask you the second question, which is, are you guys currently using Azure Active Directory? Okay, and thank you very much for those questions. As like I said, 100% of you are on Office 365, and almost 70% of you are using Azure Active Directory. So I think we have a great topic here. So I'm going to hand it off here to Jason and let him walk you through the presentation today.
All right, well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. So I'm going to be presenting on Azure Active Directory. So for those of you who are not using Azure Active Directory yet, I hope you're going to walk away with a lot of new knowledge on how this service can help your organization both strategically and from the bottom line. And for those of you who are familiar with Azure Active Directory and have been using it, I'm hoping that maybe you'll walk away at least with 2 new bits of knowledge on how you can utilize Azure Active Directory even more. All right, so the first area that I want to focus in on is what Microsoft calls one identity. Now, with your cloud accounts, Azure Active Directory is pre-integrated with over 2,500 third-party software as a service apps, such as Salesforce.com, Box, Facebook, Twitter, even Netflix. And you can also integrate it not just with the third-party software as a service apps, but with line of business apps that you have yourself. Now, these are for your cloud accounts. Now, something that you can also do is you can synchronize Azure Active Directory with your on-premise AD. So that way, it's not just your cloud account, it is your regular enterprise account that you're using both on-premise and in the cloud.
So in other words, Jason, the one that you're using every day to log into your PC on your desk, it can be the same identity as you're running in the cloud?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
And to do that, you use a product called Azure AD Directory Connect, which will do the synchronization from traditional AD to Azure Active Directory. And with advanced features, you can even enable things such as write back, which we'll cover in just a moment. Now, something else that you can do with Azure Active Directory is you can use it to enable remote access to your on-premise web apps or your intranet. And you do that through the Microsoft Application Proxy Server. And it's essentially kind of a DMZ as a service. So you can make your on-premise apps remotely accessible using the preferred credentials that you want. So you can take legacy and on-premise apps and make them remotely available to users coming in outside your network and through the web.
Now, is that multi-factor authentication, or is that just a single authentication? Is it anything special from what you're regularly doing?
Well, that's a great question. So in a couple slides, we'll be covering multi-factor authentication, but with the web application proxy, if you have users who are outside your network, they can access from their dashboard the third-party software as a service apps, but they can also connect to and use on-premise line of business apps, web apps, intranet.
So would this take the place of a VPN?
For users coming in from the outside for accessing apps, absolutely.
Okay, and it's as secure as a VPN. There's no access that they're losing, or no functionality that they're losing from a VPN to the web access?
Correct. The connections all can be kept secure.
Okay.
All right, so we just covered kind of some of the basics there, and those are great things to have. They're important, but all these things, a lot of this is about empowering the employees. So, the challenge is with users is that the users in your organization want to be able to kind of use any device, anytime, to access any app and any data that the company has. They want to be able to work more efficiently, more effectively, and they want to work on the devices of their preference. So the challenge for IT is, okay, that's great, but we need to put some controls in place to provide the security and compliance requirements that we have. And Azure Active Directory is a big part of enabling this to happen. So, with that, there are a number of operations that cost organizations money to their bottom line in supporting some of these user empowerment features. So one thing I want to point out is, in order to really empower employees. First of all, this has to be easy to use and accessible. So one thing that the employees can do, whether it's the third-party software as a service apps like Facebook or Salesforce or Dynamic CRM, or if it's some of the intranet apps that you're using, from your My Apps web page, you can launch any of these apps, and you can also choose which apps you want to add to your app dashboard for quick and easy access. So the whole point here is you'll have a variety of icons that can be third-party software as a service apps as well as on-premise internet apps that you can access with a single click through portal@office.com.
So isn't that the login page for Office 365 on the web? So you can customize that page for all your applications, even on-premise?
Yes, absolutely. And it can tie into quite a few different on-premise applications as well, including some traditional client apps as long as the client's on your machine.
Wow, oh, that's pretty cool.
Now, something else, and this is where it can help alleviate costs in the organization. With Azure Active Directory, you can enable password reset, and the users can do this on their own. And if you have password write-back enabled, the user can reset their password not only for their cloud account, but if you have synchronization with traditional AD and with what they call password write-back, you're also updating your traditional on-premise credentials. So you don't have to call help desk. In fact, many organizations, I think in reports I've seen, that at some point during the year, 1 out of every 4 employees calls the help desk to help with password reset. This eliminates that. So this is both a kind of important strategic move, it empowers the users, and it reduces costs. Now, this password reset also allows them to enable both those third-party software as a service apps as well as the on-premise apps. And something that you can do that we'll talk about a little bit more is the users don't necessarily have to know what those passwords are to the other applications. They just know they have their Office 365 account or their Azure AD account to log into. And in some cases, the credentials to those other apps, they don't even know what they are. But we'll talk about that more in just a little bit. One of the other things you can do is with empowering employees is with AD groups. You can create, basically do AD group management, which will allow certain users to create their own groups, and they can access the group and change the business rules in them and change who is part of that group without having to go to a Tier 1 or Tier 2 help desk person to help manage AD groups for them. So for team leaders, project managers, anytime you have a new group that needs to be set up, you can create the group and let that person self-manage who's in the group or not. And that also cuts down in time. It empowers your employees who are trying to work on projects, start new projects. So that is another great feature. Now, something else you can also do is you can add branding. And this really just gives kind of your users a good feeling and comfort level when they're logging into any of these different applications. They're logging into your branded credential page. They see the logo, and it's a familiar experience for them regardless of what device or platform they're using. Now, also in the spirit of bring your own device, something else that you can do is enable your users to on their own join their machines to the corporate domain. Now, in the past, this could involve multiple people where the machine had to be brought in. Multiple people then had to kind of domain join it, go through all that whole process. Now, with a single click, you can let users domain join their machine on their own. Now, this is built into Windows 10, and it's a great feature. I've been told that you can also enable this for Windows 8 as well, but we haven't done that yet here at Champion. All right, something else I wanted to talk about, we're calling beyond username and passwords. And let's say you've decided you're running Windows 10, and this is right now specific to Windows 10. You don't want to use your username and password anymore. Maybe you just want to use a multi-factor authentication to log into your PC. Well, you can do that.
You can have the system call you on the phone. You can press pound key on your phone and have it then authenticate you into the network. You can also use Microsoft Passport, which will do face recognition to log you in. It also can do a fingerprint scan to log you in. And it can also do a retinal scan to log you in. So that's pretty cool. So in addition to using a traditional username and password, you can use multi-factor authentication, and you now have these other feature options through Microsoft Passport. And that's pre-integrated with Azure Active Directory.
Now, are these available right now? I know Windows Hello, I think, is still in beta, right? I think it is, but I'm sure Passport's available for them right now, right?
Yes, Passport's been around and it's gone through a couple generations, but now that it's integrated with Azure Active Directory, it's kind of taking it to a whole new level, plus being pre-integrated with Windows 10.
Oh, that's great.
So it's additional options, and as more releases come, it'll just get better and better.
So you can't do this with 7 or 8. You have to be on 10 to use Microsoft Passport.
From what I know right now, yes.
Okay.
I would assume at some point that that will change. Now, one of the other challenges that IT organizations have is privileged access. And sometimes it can get out of hand. Sometimes certain levels of access are forgotten about. So there's two kind of accounts that we'll focus in on right now. One is just certain administrators who don't need all access, but maybe they need some particular access and just for a certain period of time. So with Azure Active Directory, you can do what they call just-in-time elevated access. And that allows you to kind of audit and track who did what, when, and where. And that's very valuable. Now, they also identify another group called high-value accounts. And maybe these are folks in finance, maybe in marketing. It really just depends on the organization structure. So here, they need access to different apps. Maybe these are software as a service apps, like Facebook. Maybe this is the corporate Facebook account. It could also be on-premise or intranet apps. Now, with these high-value accounts, using the vaulted password service that comes as part of the solution, you can have the system automatically create long, complex passwords that the user never has to know about or remember. They simply log in using their Office 365 account, their Azure AD account, and they can access these apps through the app dashboard without ever having to know what those are. So when the user, let's see, no longer needs that access, you simply remove it. Or if they leave the organization, none of those accounts actually go with them. Plus, they no longer have to remember these long, complex passwords. That's all obfuscated from them.
Can these high-value accounts, can there be different parameters, like different groups of high-user accounts? Like marketing, for instance, might need Twitter and might need Facebook and LinkedIn, where maybe the accounting needs to go to Bank of America and Chase Manhattan or whatever. Can you have different groups of high-valued accounts?
Absolutely, and that's where kind of the whole tool starts coming together, because you can choose and manage through Azure Active Directory groups who has access, who can see and who has access to these different applications, whether they're software as a service apps or even line of business apps.
Oh, that's great.
And some of the advanced features too even allow the automatic provisioning of accounts in those software as a service apps for you. And that can also be based on AD group.
So on these high value, if for instance I hire someone in the accounting group and they join the accounting group in AD,
yes,
that has a high valued access, do they automatically get added to that high valued access?
You can set it up so when they're put in that group, it will automatically create an account for them. Maybe it's in a software as a service accounting package, which there are several out there, and they don't even have to know what the actual credentials are. They just now have access to it through the Office 365 portal.
Oh, so it makes it easy. It's just like managing AD, but with a little bit added spin to it.
Absolutely. It makes it easier. It empowers the users, allow all of us to work more quickly and focus less on a lot of kind of the individual steps and tasks that you had to go through before to kind of link all these things together. But it also gives you kind of the security and auditability that modern day businesses need.
Now, is this something that's only available in Azure Active Directory, or is this something that you could do on-premise?
Well, these are all tied into Azure Active Directory.
Okay.
So where you have traditional AD, and Azure Active Directory is AD, but it's in the cloud with a lot of extra services tied to it.
Okay.
Now, there's something else that we'll refer to kind of as advanced security at scale. And this is where Microsoft is really trying to bring in their decades of experience around security and managing millions of tenants and billions of authentications. They've also brought in machine learning, and they use this to also kind of help monitor and track what's going on in what they call shadow IT, or the dark internet or dark web. So a couple things here. One is Cloud App Discovery. That's a tool that comes with Azure Active Directory Premium, and you can use it to find out what are all of the software as a service apps, the third-party web apps that your users use, that they need and they care about. And it'll also identify which of those can actually be brought in and under Azure Active Directory. And in reports I've seen from Microsoft, the number of those web apps that users are actually using is 10 times more than what the IT department originally estimates. So it's good to find out what they're using. There might be some cases where you're finding that certain apps are being used that really shouldn't be, but it also lets you know which of these can be brought in under the security and auditability of Azure Active Directory.
To run that Cloud App Discovery, does the machine have to be in your domain?
Well, you can push out an agent through a GPO,
Okay.
and it will track over a period of time all the apps being used, and then bring that back to you in a central report.
I was just wondering for BYOD, and a lot of companies are looking at people bringing in their own devices, whether they're iPads or tablets or whatever it might be. Will it track those type of devices too, or do you have to push an agent to it to get that type of information?
Right now, this just works on Windows PCs.
Just on Windows, okay.
Correct. On the PCs themselves. Now, they recently started supporting OS X. I'm not sure if Cloud App Discovery is covering that yet. It very well might be. And one of the exciting things is the amount of energy and resources that Microsoft is putting behind everything cloud is staggering, which means every month there are some additional features and functions added, which are to our benefit. We spend usually a certain period of time every week just checking up on what's been added, what are the new great features that we can now start implementing for customers.
That's great.
Now, there's another area talk about, and that's really, even with all the protection apparatus and kind of security measures that are in place, and the precautions that your users do take, sometimes credentials, meaning a username and password, get leaked somehow. Now, the problem with that is there's really a disproportionate level of investment that is required to kind of identify leaked credentials until it's too late. And once it's too late, and significant damage has already been done. In fact, one study from Microsoft suggests that the industry average for detecting a compromised username and password, I think, is 8 or 9 months.
Wow.
Now, they have new tools that help monitor kind of the dark and nefarious places on the internet, and for credentials floating around, lists of credentials for sale, and they have other kind of tools built in to identify signals that might identify an account's credentials have been compromised. And what it can do is generate a report and alert you, and even quarantine those accounts for you. Now, it's not just going to do these things just because it decides that's the best thing. It allows you to kind of configure the service to what makes sense for your organization, and the reporting around it. You can use it to stay aware of what's going on, not just with accounts, but even also apps being used by your users. And with that, you can decide, what do we need to get integrated with Azure Active Directory. And one of the benefits, just to kind of step back a little, with all these apps, we all know that a lot of users will use the same password across every single app account they create, which we know is not a good thing. One of the benefits, an important benefit of tying these into Azure Active Directory is they don't have to know what those credentials are anymore, and they can all be different.
So how much extra is this feature in Azure Active Directory?
App Discovery is one of the tools that's available for you when you are using Azure Active Directory Premium.
Oh, so it's included. And what about the malicious attacks? Is that also included with Premium?
Yes, and they have some variations of that tool. In fact, what they're trying to do with Office 365 is they will offer certain mobile device management solutions, some rights management solutions, even some of this proactive and reactive monitoring at no cost with your Office 365 subscription. And that's with the free levels of Azure Active Directory. There's basic and premium, which add additional levels of kind of compliance control and security settings that you can use.
And then they have bundles like EMS, right, that can even take it to the next level.
Right, yeah. EMS is like the ultimate suite. It's 4 different products. It's Azure Active Directory Premium, Intune Rights Management, and Advanced Threat Analytics, kind of all bundled together. It's 4 different products, but they're bundled together under one price, which is really ideal in what every enterprise should ultimately be looking at when they need a really comprehensive solution for both empowering users, but also providing the protection that modern organizations need.
And again, that's all in the cloud.
All in the cloud.
Okay.
So related to what we're just talking about is conditional access and beyond. And what this means is, beyond just the users, and Kevin, you mentioned this earlier, what about the devices? So we know that users want to be able to use any device, anywhere, anytime. So you can also start monitoring those devices. Are they secure? What's the state of the device? You can monitor the patch levels, the version of the software, when the person last logged in using that device, and a whole bunch of other, refer to them as signals that help enable making sure access is available, or notifying the admins that this account could have been compromised. So sometimes people forget they have credentials that they stored in a browser, and they don't have that machine anymore, or they loaned it to someone, or whatever the case is, and all of a sudden the system can detect, hey, this user has not used this machine in 4 months, and all of a sudden it pops up. Those are just some of the things that this can help keep track of.
Well, especially if they have more than one shift. Sometimes people share a computer amongst multiple users, right? Especially in like hospital situations where it's a nursing station or something like that. So this could actually help you protect your credentials down the road.
Absolutely, and a number of our clients, these solutions are all very important for all their satellite offices. In some cases where they don't want to be running servers, but they need to, again, have the access and the empowerment to their employees and contractors, but also put in these controls to safeguard the company. Now, active security monitoring, where earlier when we were talking about how Microsoft has all these services that will help kind of monitor what's going on in what they call shadow IT and dark internet and dark web. The other part of this is the active security monitoring, in which it's using machine learning and monitoring the behavior of users in your organization to help determine if an account has been compromised. And it doesn't just monitor user counts, it also monitors kind of the app usage and what devices. For instance, if someone hasn't used a device in 4 or 6 months and all of a sudden it pops up, that could be an area of concern. But it goes beyond that. It also looks at what's going on in certain regions. So all of a sudden, if there's a particular new virus or Trojan or bug that appears on a certain device, a certain platform, or from a certain patch, started in a certain region, it can track these on a global basis and start providing kind of advisory notifications. Hey, there's a problem with this device, this platform, this patch, with this kind of security issue. And the active security monitoring is pretty impressive, and it can help really mitigate what could be some costly incidents for the organization.
Now, this seems pretty complicated to me. I mean, is this something that Champion can help them deploy and get up and running in their environment, and maybe help them with best practices to get the whole thing going?
Absolutely. And in fact, we actually recently completed a security survey where what we didn't want is for us to say, here are the security best practices. What we wanted to do is actually go out to a lot of our clients and the industry in general and say, what are your best practices? And that's actually a research paper that's available on our website, messageops.com, where you can actually see, what are the security practices we're following now, and how does that rate to other folks who are in same industry and similar size businesses. You can see, am I as good as or not as good as? Am I better than what the industry average is?
The one thing, I read that paper, and I know that we said that 93% of the clients responded back that they were using passwords. That just means 7% of them aren't using passwords, which kind of floored me. I thought that was something that would be 100%. So I think, if you read this paper, there's a lot of interesting statistics that you would think are no-brainers, but they really aren't.
Right, including things such as automatic lockout after a certain number of invalid login attempts in a row. In fact, I think that number was in the 20 or 30% where companies weren't enforcing that. And the good news is all of these things are actually not hard to enforce. These are services that you can consume. You don't have to buy all these servers and install the software and learn how to run them all. We're simply enabling services, configuring them, and then you can start utilizing them.
And that's the same thing with almost every software that you get. There's so much in there. Sometimes you just don't know what's available to be able to configure them, and that's where things like this webinar actually at least gives them an idea of what's available in Azure Active Directory.
Exactly. And what I'm hoping, again, for those of you who are familiar with Azure Active Directory, we've at least brought up a couple new items that you may not have been that familiar with. And for those who are new to it, we hope you find this, one, very interesting, but two, that you can really start seeing kind of the strategic and bottom line value that this can bring to your organization. And the last item from Microsoft is, they want you to view this as the one directory. And part of this is kind of some future statements that I'll be making, in that one user account that can be integrated to on-premise with thousands of third-party software service apps. It can be integrated with on-premise. It can be tied into reactive as well as proactive security tools. And that's great for your users, but there's also your business partners and even consumers. Microsoft right now has the B2C, business to consumer Azure Active Directory service in preview, because you want to start enabling some of these same things for apps that you create, that you release to your users. But the great thing about B2C is it's priced very, very differently, because if you have 100,000 users, customers, that's very different than having 100,000 traditional Active Directory accounts. So the pricing is extremely, ridiculously reasonable, so you should check that out. And just think about this. Soon, everything that we went over, wouldn't you want to be able to start offering that to your partners as well as your customers, the same kinds of experience? Let them choose to enable multi-factor authentication in the apps that you're building, that it will work on Android, Windows, and iOS, and Mac. So these are all things that you can offer. It's one directory management experience without compromising security. And that is our 10 steps of introducing you to Azure Active Directory.
Now, I know you were going to do a simple demo. I mean, nothing major because it's hard to demo all these really advanced products. But just to give them a look at the interface, and for those people that aren't familiar with what Azure Active Directory looks like, and there we go.
Sure. So this is one of our mini test accounts. I'm not going to show you anything in production, but this is one of the test accounts that we have, and I probably am going to have to re-authenticate. So let me... Well,
let me ask you a question. Now, Azure Active Directory, this doesn't replace your on-premise Active Directory. This just enhances it. Is that a correct statement?
Famous answer in IT of yes and no.
Okay.
I'm sure a lot of us in IT have given the yes-no answer to frustrated.
Depends.
It depends. So no, it doesn't replace. You can have the hybrid environment where you integrate or you synchronize traditional AD with Azure Active Directory. We have been working with new clients who a lot of the times are startups who are saying, you know what, we want everything in the cloud, which you can do that too.
Oh, okay.
There are pros and cons to every approach, and the good news is basically you can tailor the environment to whatever makes sense for your organization. So what I want to show you in this test account is we have an Azure Active Directory tenant created. You can have multiple ones, and from this you can enable multi-factor authentication and rights management.
When you say that, are you talking about different domains? When you say you could have many of these accounts and manage it from the same interface, are these all federated accounts that you could do from here?
Each one of those Azure Active Directory tenants that you create can be federated if it makes sense to your organization, but yes, the answer is yes there.
Okay.
So this is one of the Azure Active Directory tenants in a test account we have, and I'll just show you real quickly under users, and let's find my test account, and I'm going to go to activity. And this ties into some of the security services. This will show you the date and time and location that I've logged in to different cloud services. So you can see Azure Portal, Microsoft Azure, Exchange Online. And so this is one of the tools that helps organizations, some of the services that are running in the background, to say, hey, you just logged in from Boca Raton, but you also just logged in 5,000 miles away. Maybe there's something happening here.
So when the client name over there, is that just the OS it's running, or is that the actual client name of the computer that's logging in?
Oh no, that's the operating system that the client's running.
So I see what you're saying. So if you're here, you can't be in San Diego logging in there also, unless you're doing like a remote desktop or something. But most of the time that doesn't happen.
Correct. Oh, yep. And that was our demo. So we're going to switch over and look to see if there were any questions that came up.
Yeah, let me just...
And
now in the chat, in your little client that comes here, just hit that little arrow up
and
there.
I did want to share this link to folks.
Okay.
Or not.
In your chat area over there, that's right down at the bottom, you can actually type in a question if you want to ask Jason or myself. I mean, Jason's the smart one here, but if you want to ask me a question, that's fine too. If you just want to type a question in the chat box, we'll try to answer them as quickly as possible. I hope that this 40 minutes that we spent with you gave you a real good understanding of how Azure Active Directory works, what features are available to you, and if you need help, the champion's available and willing to, assist you in getting Azure Active Directory running, but more important, optimizing it for you.
All right, and in the chat I just posted a link. If any of you want to take, it's a security challenge. It just asks you 5 questions. So it's a very basic level security survey, and it will then show you your level of risk based on what your response is, but also show you kind of where you're ranking with other participants with those same 5 questions.
Well, that's that survey that you were talking about earlier.
Well, this is a much smaller survey.
Okay.
The big industry one, I think, was multiple pages long, but this is just 5 quick questions.
Oh, okay. All right, I don't see any questions here, and I don't want to keep this.
Oh, nope.
Oh,
We have,
here we go.
all right, so one of the questions was about the basic version that comes with Office 365. So there are 3 versions of Azure Active Directory. There's the free version, basic, and premium. And the next questions actually all 3 of these questions from different folks deal with the same issue: pricing for Azure AD and what's in basic versus premium. So I'm actually just going to take us to the Azure site and share this link. So one, you know how to get here, so you can actually come back anytime and reference these. So at azure.microsoft.com, I click on products, and these are some of all the services that are available in Azure. I'm clicking on Azure Active Directory, and I'm going to click on pricing. And here, I'll go ahead and also post this.
It's also where they can sign up for that 30-day free trial, right?
Yes, absolutely. I'm posting this in the webinar chat, and then also scroll down so everyone can see. And here it does a breakdown, and this scrolls down for a while, of the difference between the free version, basic, and premium. And that's where you can kind of compare and contrast the 3 versions.
So the free is what you get with Office 365.
It just comes as part of that,
Right.
No additional cost, because Office 365 is using Azure Active Directory.
Okay. And anything that they've already configured and did in Office 365, if they wanted to move to basic or premium, would just carry over. They wouldn't have to start from scratch. They could actually just enhance what they're already doing?
Correct.
Okay.
Right, and with premium, actually all you're doing is you can have some users who are using Azure Active Directory Premium, and you simply enable that license to specified users in Azure Active Directory.
Oh.
So you might have a subset of users where you want those additional features and functions for, but maybe not everyone.
So for instance, that dashboard that you were showing us here, in the free version you get 10 apps per user. In the basic you get 10, but in premium you get as many as you want.
Correct, per user.
Right.
All right.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Let's see. No other questions. We had 3, and I hope sharing that link answers the questions that you had around the difference between the basic and free version, and the costs, and the differences between basic and premium.
Well, we want to thank everyone for their time today. I think you did a great job, Jason. I think you answered a lot of questions for me that I didn't know. So I'm hoping the same happened with our audience. You want to leave them with any last words?
Last words would be, feel free to get in contact with us. If you have any questions about Azure or Azure Active Directory, you can get a free account to Azure, as well as free accounts to Azure Active Directory Premium. And take a minute and take our security challenge, that link I shared earlier.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and everyone have a great day and have a happy holiday.
All right, thank you, everyone. Take care.